My fiancé met his ex in secret. His sister's security camera revealed everything. I, 28, have been with my fiancé, Tom, 30, for 3 years. Looking back now, I should have seen the warning signs from the very beginning. When we first met at my friend Rachel's housewarming party, he spent 20 minutes telling me about his complicated past relationship with Sarah. At the time, I thought it was refreshing, a man who could be open about his feelings and past experiences. How naive I was. That night, Rachel pulled me aside and warned me that Tom had been in a serious relationship with Sarah for 6 years, and their breakup had been messy. Apparently, Sarah had moved to Seattle for a job opportunity, and neither of them wanted to do long distance. It wasn't exactly a clean break. They'd tried to make it work for a few months, with Tom even flying out to visit her twice, before finally calling it quits. "Just be careful," Rachel had said, squeezing my arm. "Tom's great, but Sarah's always been present, if you know what I mean." I didn't know what she meant then, but I certainly do now. Our relationship started wonderfully. Tom was attentive, caring, and seemed genuinely excited about building a future together. He worked as an architect at a prestigious firm downtown, and I still am, a pediatric nurse. We shared similar values, wanted the same things in life, and our friend groups merged seamlessly. Well, almost seamlessly. There was always this underlying current whenever Sarah's name came up. Tom's best friend, Mike, would sometimes mention her in passing, and Tom would get this distant look in his eyes. During our first year together, I discovered that Tom still had all their photos on his Facebook profile. When I brought it up, trying to be casual about it, he said he just hadn't gotten around to deleting them. It took him another 3 months to finally do it, and only after I mentioned it again. Then there was the incident at Mike's wedding 2 years ago. Sarah sent a congratulatory video message that was played during the reception. Apparently, she'd been close friends with Mike's wife during college. Tom disappeared for almost an hour after that, claiming he needed some air. When he came back, his eyes were red, but he insisted it was just allergies. I chose to believe him because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You trust them even when your gut is screaming at you not to. The real problem started when we got engaged last year. Tom proposed during a weekend trip to the coast, and it was perfect: sunset on the beach, private dinner, the whole 9 yards. I was over the moon, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. We started planning the wedding, picked out venues, and I even found my dream dress at the 3rd store we visited. My mom, Ellen, was thrilled. She'd always liked Tom, saying he reminded her of my dad when he was younger. She threw us an elaborate engagement party, inviting practically everyone we knew. During the party, I overheard Tom's mom, Margaret, talking to him in the kitchen. She was asking if he'd told her about the engagement. I didn't need to ask who her was. "Mom, that's not appropriate," Tom had said, but his voice was soft, almost regretful. "Sarah and I haven't spoken in months." Months. Not years. Months. That was my first real clue that something wasn't right, but I pushed it aside. We were planning our future together, after all. Who cared about his past? The wedding planning continued, and Tom seemed invested in every decision. He had opinions about flowers, helped choose the color scheme, and even insisted on hand designing our invitations himself, given his architectural background. Everything was falling into place, until that cursed message from Sarah arrived a month ago. I remember that day clearly. We were having breakfast together, a rare occurrence given our schedules, when his phone buzzed. I saw Sarah's name flash across the screen, but Tom quickly turned the phone over. When I asked who it was, he said it was just work. That was lie number 1. Over the next week, I noticed changes in his behavior. He started taking his phone with him everywhere, even to the bathroom. He was staying late at work more often, claiming he had a big project coming up. One night, he said he had to meet a client for dinner. That was lie number 2. The truth came out when I saw that message: "Thanks for last night." It meant a lot to finally talk everything through. I'm glad we could get closure. When I confronted him, Tom's initial reaction wasn't to apologize. Instead, he got defensive, his face flushing red as he paced our living room. "You went through my phone?" he demanded, as if that was the real issue here. "The message popped up while your phone was on the counter," I shot back. "Why did you lie about meeting her?" That's when the gaslighting began. He tried to make it seem like I was the unreasonable one, the insecure girlfriend who couldn't handle her fiancé having a friendship with his ex. He explained how Sarah had reached out because she'd heard about our engagement through mutual friends. She wanted to clear the air before we got married. We just talked, he insisted, running his hands through his hair in frustration. We met at Café Luna and ended up talking until morning. Nothing happened. Until morning? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You spent the entire night with your ex-girlfriend and didn't think to mention it to me. Because I knew you'd react like this, he shouted, then immediately lowered his voice, trying to sound reasonable. Look, Sarah and I shared 6 years of our lives. 6 years. We needed this conversation to properly move forward. I'm marrying you, aren't I? Isn't that proof enough of where my heart is? But it wasn't proof enough. Not when he'd lied about meeting her. Not when he'd spent an entire night with her without even sending me a text. And certainly not when he dropped the bomb about wanting to invite her to our wedding. It would show everyone that we're all mature adults, he explained, as if he was suggesting something completely normal. Sarah's actually really excited about our wedding. She thinks we're perfect together. That's when something inside me snapped. Oh, she thinks we're perfect together? Well, thank goodness we have Sarah's approval. Should we ask her to be my maid of honor too? The sarcasm flew right over his head. See, this is exactly why I didn't tell you about meeting her. You're being irrational. Sarah is part of my past, yes, but she's also been a huge part of my life. We grew up together, we went through college together, And now you're supposed to be starting a new life with me, I interrupted. But instead, you're sneaking around with her behind my back. The argument continued for hours. Tom kept insisting that I was making a mountain out of a molehill, that his relationship with Sarah was purely platonic now, and that I needed to grow up and accept that people can be friends with their exes. But it wasn't about being friends with an ex. It was about trust, respect, and boundaries, 3 things Tom seemed to have very flexible definitions of. The next few days were tense. Tom slept in the guest room, claiming he needed space to process my overreaction. Meanwhile, I reached out to Rachel, who revealed something that made my blood run cold. Apparently, Sarah had never really wanted to end things with Tom. The job in Seattle had been her attempt to push their relationship to the next level. She'd expected him to either move with her or fight harder to make long-distance work. When he didn't, she took the job anyway, but she'd always held out hope they'd eventually find their way back to each other. That's why I warned you that night we met, Rachel admitted over wine at her place. Sarah's never really let go of Tom. She dates other people, sure, but none of them ever measure up to him in her mind. The more I learned, the more everything started making sense. The kept photos, the emotional reaction at Mike's wedding, the secret meeting for closure, it was all part of a pattern I'd been too in love to see clearly. Things came to a head when Tom's sister, Emma, called me. She'd always been kind to me, and I considered her a friend. But this call changed everything. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice heavy with concern. Tom and Sarah. They didn't just talk that night. They went to our family's beach house. My heart stopped. The beach house, the same place where Tom had proposed to me. How do you know? I managed to ask. Because I have the security camera footage. I was checking it because we'd had some teenagers vandalizing the property lately. I saw them arrive around 9 p.m. and leave at 5 a.m. When I confronted Tom with this information, his story changed yet again. Okay, yes, we went to the beach house, he admitted. But only because Café Luna was closing, and we needed somewhere private to talk. Private? I laughed bitterly. You needed somewhere private to talk to your ex-girlfriend in the middle of the night, at the same place where you proposed to me? That's when he dropped the final bomb. Sarah's moving back to town, he blurted out. She got offered a position at her company's local office. That's partly why she reached out, she wanted to make sure it wouldn't be awkward. I stared at him, completely dumbfounded. And you didn't think this was important information to share with your fiancé? I was going to tell you, he insisted. I just needed to figure out the right way to do it. And honestly, this is exactly why I was hesitant, you're completely overreacting. That was the moment I knew I couldn't marry him. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore, it was about Tom's complete inability to see how his actions affected me, his constant deflection of responsibility, and his persistent prioritization of Sarah's feelings over mine. I took off my engagement ring and placed it on the coffee table between us. "I'm calling off the wedding," I said quietly. For the first time in our entire relationship, Tom looked genuinely scared. "You can't be serious," he stammered. "Over this? Over one night of catching up with an old friend?" "No, Tom. Not over one night. Over 3 years of never fully committing to our relationship because you're still emotionally tied to Sarah. Over lying to me, gaslighting me, and making me feel crazy for having completely normal reactions to your inappropriate behavior." That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, my phone has been flooded with messages from friends and family, all taking sides in a battle I never wanted to fight. Tom's been telling everyone that I'm controlling and insecure, that I'm throwing away our relationship over an innocent friendship. Some of our mutual friends think I'm overreacting. They were together for 6 years, they say, as if that justifies everything. Of course they needed closure. But others, particularly those who've known Tom and Sarah's history, understand completely. Emma's been especially supportive, sending me the security footage that shows Tom and Sarah arriving at the beach house with a bottle of wine, something he conveniently forgot to mention in his just talking narrative. Rachel called yesterday to tell me that Sarah's already moved back to town, and surprise, she and Tom have been spotted having coffee together at his favorite cafe. Just friends catching up, according to Tom's latest Facebook status. My mom thinks I should give him another chance. Relationships take work, she says. Maybe couples counseling would help? But I know in my heart that I made the right decision. The past month has been like watching a movie where all the clues were there from the beginning, but you only notice them during the second viewing. Every innocent mention of Sarah, every coincidental run-in with mutual friends who brought her up, every time Tom got that distant look in his eyes, they were all warning signs I chose to ignore. Yesterday, I finished moving the last of my things out of his apartment. As I was leaving, I found an old photo that had fallen behind the dresser. It was of Tom and Sarah at some party years ago, both of them laughing at something off camera. The date stamp showed it was taken just 2 weeks before he met me. I left it on the kitchen counter, along with my key. Some people might think I'm giving up too easily, that I should fight for our relationship. But I realize now that I've been fighting alone for 3 years, competing with a ghost who turned out to not be a ghost at all, but a very real person who never truly left Tom's life. The hardest part isn't even the betrayal or the lies. It's the realization that while I was planning our future, Tom was still living in his past. And maybe, just maybe, that's where he always wanted to be. I've blocked both their numbers and removed them from all social media. Emma still keeps me updated, though I'm not sure if that's helping or hurting my healing process. Apparently, Tom and Sarah have been spending a lot of time together, working through their feelings. Part of me wonders if that was their plan all along, to use this closure meeting as a way to rekindle their relationship. But you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. I deserve someone who chooses me completely, who doesn't need closure with their ex while planning a future with me, who doesn't lie about spending nights with someone else, and who certainly doesn't try to make me feel crazy for having perfectly reasonable boundaries. Rachel's trying to set me up with her cousin who just moved to town, but I'm not ready for that yet. For now, I'm focusing on myself, on my career, and on rebuilding my trust in my own instincts, the ones I ignored for far too long. The wedding venue was understanding about the cancellation, though we lost the deposit. My dress is being resold through a consignment shop. The invitations Tom so carefully designed never made it to the post office. They're sitting in a box in my parents' garage, along with other remnants of what I thought would be my future. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't seen that message on Tom's phone, if I'd remained blissfully ignorant of his late-night closure session with Sarah. Would I have ended up married to someone who could never fully let go of his past? Would I have spent years competing with Sarah's ghost, only to have her physical presence return to make things even more complicated? I'll never know the answer to those questions, and honestly, I'm grateful for that. Because while Tom might still be trying to figure out if Sarah is the one that got away, I'm finally free from being the one who never really had him in the first place.